let us continue. We have a lot to do, right? We're going to build up the stage to invite at least 100 players, meaning the individuals and businesses, right? As significant players in the market. Right? In the AI, robotics, domains, right? The markets segments. Right? So far, we look at Elon Musk, right? The Tesla and XAI, right? And other ventures of Elon Musk, right? We also look at Jason Huang, the Nvidia, right? Especially the latest CES, right? In Las Vegas, right? And we look at the Google and Anthropic and Meta and OpenAI, right? We also look at the Microsoft, right, which is another big player there. Right? That's on the US side, on the left, right? On the other side, we look at DeepSeek and co-innovate from Alibaba, the GLM that is from ZAI, right? Minimax, Moonshot, right? TikTok side of that as well, Kimi, others, right? So I think it is a good opportunity to bring them together, right? There's going to be a little competition, a big competition, but hopefully, let's see if there are any collaboration, any room of integration, right? It is quite bipolar, right? In the AR, AI robotics world, right? See, is any way like we can bring the world together? One of the ways is probably mergers and acquisitions, some exchange of thoughts, right? But there are going to be a lot of geopolitical struggles, right? Some sort of sanctions and regulatories in the name of whatever, right? There's never going to be a perfect or best moment, right? We really kind of think through and see how things are going to play out, right? The merger and acquisition, which is part of the market halls, right? That ecosystem, that mechanism, hopefully is not totally kind of break down or kind of fragmented yet, right? Yeah, there's some challenges for sure, right? Just taking the Meta miners, right? Miners is originally in China, right? And then moved down to Singapore. Singapore is right here, I guess, right? Very close here, right? I guess. But hopefully the deal is going through, right? I think it is 2.3 billion, right? It's good for the team. In my opinion, it is sad for China. I think China needs to catch up. It has its own problems, right? It cannot blame others, right? Why such a vibrant group of entrepreneurs cannot even live and survive, and let alone going big in China? It is a problem. You have to recognize that. You cannot just tell it is politics or whatever. Admit it. You are falling behind in many aspects, including that create an environment, allow people to thrive, right? Allow businesses to really grow, right? You're not that strong yet, right? It is you have to look at the whole picture, not just the, like DeepSeek, very strong in innovation, leadership, in latest manifold kind of thing, right? That's incredible, right? The sparse attention in OCR is incredible, but again, that's just a small part of the whole thing, right? US is by far is still way advanced. I would say miles ahead, right? It's not inches ahead. Now, okay. I mean, my kind of in a very remote backdrop of my mind is that hopefully China is not going to block the acquisition of miners, right? You might heard of they have all the good reasons, or the right lyrics, narrative to sing and dance, right? I'm not going to get in that. The TikTok, well, the technology, whatever, right? National security, like the US side, they always use that. But it's a market at play, right? They still have not totally closed, right? Hopefully, China do not attempt at all block the sales or acquisition of miners, right? Of course, there are a lot of patriotic talks, right? But again, we are really in the same planet. Right? We all have our little tricks to play, right? Big or small. Many times we're just pretending to be smart, right? Really very selfish, right? Some vested interest, right? One way on. That's good. You need to protect yourself. But again, you also need to collaborate. Even that kind of collaboration, integration, right? It is essential for us to, for a future, right? Okay, these are a lot of talks, right? We really try to, in short, we're looking at the 2026. My prediction is going to be picking up the pace, intensify, right? People will realize one of the tactics we've been using forever, right? Is through acquisition and merger, or merger acquisition, whichever way you look at it, right? To grow the business through, cross-pollinate the innovation, right? The one of the movements, in my opinion, right, is like in the enterprise AI, which I appreciate that the OpenAI and Microsoft is going to get into that. Google really catching up, right? But how do you really build up? I'm going to do a little thing on this. I call it some sort of ontology, learning from Palantir. But that's a very old school thinking, right? It's more talks than reality. How do you really, like what Alibaba or the other big folks like Nadella talk about, the operating system, integrated whole suite of tools. That's all good, but the other side is from the brain to the hand and eyes, right? What Meta is trying to do, right? To the agentic AI agent actions, right? Like in terms of eyes and hands and skins, make it work, right? Not just a chatbot, the thinking machine, right? A lot of innovation, like Midra, the originally from the OpenAI doing her thinking lab, and Ilya doing some sort of surveillance, security, right? It's all good, right? And I'm thinking, like, what is our kind of one sentence to capture that? I think it's going to be a market, right? It's going to be a wall if you put it in that fashion, right? It's going to be kind of, merger and acquisition, in the AI robotics, right? In that, startups or even big businesses, they might be merged. Like I alluded to, like why don't Anthropic and OpenAI come together? Right? Why don't Hugging Face and just join Microsoft? Yeah, of course, they all have their, never know, right? But they're doing quite complementary in a way. They're already integrated, right? Like Google is going to start Apple, right? We have not looked at Apple, right? I've been thinking through, right? I don't know what is the message is going to benefit whoever spend a minute listen to me, right? So, in any case, it's going to be quite a war. It's exciting, right? Sorry, it's a phone, right? I need to get into that a bit more, right? So it is a marketplace. It is the war, whatever you frame it. Right? That's what we're going to examine. What are the major players that we probably know? What the candidates, right? What are the gaps in terms of the products, the business innovations, right? So if you were a startup, or if you're an individual, you want to start up a business, right? I believe you should take the path that I'm taking, right? Really do your investigation, not just listening to those, PPT kind of like very fluent, eloquent talks, right? Doesn't really help you. You need to think deeply, painfully, right? Where we are, right? What does the market want, right? Are we lost? Are we really trying to synthesize? What are the gaps, right? You have to pick one that can make a business, right? You cannot just compete with the giants, right? Right? They try to make encourage each of the big business embrace the whole suite of their tools, like Microsoft, right? And then create some sort of banking, like a private, like for example, the Morgan Stanley or HSBC or others, right? The internal kind of LLMs, right? Private things and agentic frameworks. You build up the ontology internally, everything. You can revolutionize the banks. But that's kind of big, right? But I don't know how you're gonna get there. You have to take some steps, right? The vision is very exciting. Leadership is kind of important, right? I always emphasize, right? You need leaders like Elon Musk and and Steve from Apple and others from like Google and Microsoft. But we also need thousands of millions of engineers, right? The business-minded SMEs, right? So that's the hard part, right? The engineering part. You have actually to materialize your vision, right? So that is really what I'm trying to look through. I'm not wait for the perfect speech or give you a 10 minutes and change your world. I don't believe that, right? Just thinking along with me, if you will, and I will continue on this, right? For today, we're going to look at a few things that I have been thinking through, right? You look at the world, it's kind of fractured, right? From the bottom part, you need the GPUs, right? TPUs, whatever. Huawei is taking leaps and bounds, catching up, right? But DeepSeek is going to facilitate in that, right? Not only cheap, but also sustainable, right? Electricity is not a problem there. The energy, right? The infrastructure, probably a big win over the US side. But again, you heard the rumor or whatever that is, H200, Nvidia tried to sell to China, but unfortunately they're not willing to accept it because they might have comparable or competitive offerings there already. Not about just a chip or GPU, it is how you cluster them together. Right? Obviously, Nvidia still win over, right? But that's a big market. I think like Google is going to get in the TPU part. The latest acquisition of Nvidia illustrate that how competitive what is the strategy there you could win over, right? That's one way of thinking, right? Another is like you look at this, right? On the edge, right? Some sort of economic at micro level, a big level, the mobile phone. I try to see where are the Apple, right? For example, where is Apple like iPhone, right? I love iPhone, right? On the China side, they have new phone offered by I forgot the name. I'll dig it out, right? Entirely AI geared, right? And on the edge, right? You know, the PC part. So what is the how do you really pricing the AI side, right? It's more like my private thought. I think we are at the stage is more engineering or manufacturing, if you will, rather than the internet side of it. We need to plug the whatever the capacity of AI or agentic AI into the physical world. I think there are a lot of talks on physical AI, whatever gave AI the hands and eyes, textile. Is that the right word? Let me see. Could be, right? I might have what is this? Mark Anderson. I guess you know who he is, right? Original navigator or something, right? In the early days, right? When I was very young. Yeah, okay. This looks like, the open source share, right? You need open source for sure. The big company might embrace the closed source. The big banks, the government build up the private LLMs, right? But for the by far the 80% or more, they still cannot forward to deploy OpenAI locally, for example, or you might be able to align with the Microsoft proposition Foundry to get the models, use the whole suite. But that's a locked in, right? I think Google is stepping up to do something. Meta is obviously, right? Just wonder, right? There are multi directions, not multiple dimensions. Not an easy thing, right? Let me looking for that. See how we're gonna do that. Right? Where is it? Okay, before we leave the topic, right, I'm going to find what I've been researched. I put it somewhere, right? This is really what we are looking at today, right? Put in the draft away, right? It's really the world of merger and acquisition, right? For AI kind of robotic kind of businesses, startups, and talent. Right? Talents, they have the acquire and hire, whatever you make a word. Like through acquisition, you get the talent, right? Or get hold of the IP or technology, right? They do that, right? They always do that. The physical AI, you have nerve system, you have tactile kind of touch and sense kind of skins and fingers and hands, eyes, ears, right? Our eyes. It's quite a trend. that if you're a new startup, this is the area I think you can get in. Right? It's not that difficult if you have some connections in China, right? You need really make it happen, right? Not only in the labs, you have to prove it, right? Some of the acquisition, like Hugging Face, acquired the Pauling Robotics, right? Okay, that's last year. It's already old news, right? On the infrastructure side, again last year, right? Core waves, buying some data centers, right? The China come out with a lot of like emo technology. They have some sensors, right? Scan like hand or fingers, right? From the US, you try to have synthetics, raised capital for programmable fabrics, right? Like touch signatures, right? Nvidia, obviously, they done a lot, right? They have their own kind of models, and Meta especially, right? Have very aggressive, right? How many billions destroying, right? Nvidia have this project, exact lab, and try to close the reality gap, right? Industrial simulation, digital twin. Like, I think they recently in the Las Vegas, right? You might watch it, right? With Siemens, they try to close on that to digital twin for the factory. It's gonna huge industrial implication, right? They also try to have some sort of SDK. This is one of the critical enabler kind of scan data storage, data shortage, right? You provide some sort of synthetic touch data, right? For them training the digital twin, like the real world. One of the analogy we know is brain, like LLMs, large language model, small language model, private language model. The body, the robotics, like the limbs, the hardware, the eyes, hands, and fingers, skins, and nerve system. Obviously, right, you have to build up just as the body cannot function, right? You have nerves, right? This is where it's kind of evolution, right? If you look at it, right? But this is one kind of example that startups or big companies you need to get into, right? We need real innovation, not just vapid talks, right? We reviewed not a criticism, just seems to be not a natural soil or environment for big companies really innovate. So what they do, they're going to go out and buy, right? That's what I try to illustrate here. Let's dig out what I put it somewhere, right? I'll find it. Okay. It's a good visual, right? The missing link in the embodied AI revolution, right? Who's going to fill up the gap, right? Investment, a lot of investment required, big money, right? Strategic imperative, Is that right pronunciation? Tactile kind of enabler. A big gap there, right? How big is it? Thing that we mentioned, right? The Hugging Face got Pauling Robotics, right? Emo technology, Diamond robot, right? They have some investment there. Just December, right? The startups, right? Synthetics raised 1.75 million as a VC next gen, right? Haptics, I don't even know what that means. It's like touch data startup, right? This invest in robotics in a single month. That's last year. I guess January. The figures come out later, right? I guess it's going to be more, right? We talked about it, right? The Meta and Nvidia, right? They're going to go very aggressive. They have a vision and they have the money, right? So they're going to buy, right? Rather than totally invent or reinvent, which is good, right? For the startups, it's going to be opportunities, right? You have to be part of the ecosystem of big player, right? There's going to be a lot of investment, as I said, right? Because the huge gaps as we fall, right? Despite the massive investment, right? We're going to fundamentally, there has to be like from the lab to the actual physical world, like factories of agriculture, the farms, right? Or the office and big businesses, right? It has to be physical, right? You cannot just it's a good idea or work in the lab, you have to do a little demo, right? That can be fake, but in the real world, you need to function, right? Like the robots, you can dance, but it doesn't mean you can move a box, right, from one shelf to the other, right? Like, can you crack egg and cook milk? That takes a lot of intelligence, right? There's engineering. That's not just a show, right? And yeah, I mean, we do need standards, right? But that's later on, right? Where do we get the training data is a problem to solve, right? And yeah, multimodal, high resolution, neuromorphic processing, like neurons, right? Chemical signal or whatever, biological, electrical kind of thing. There's a bit of latency, right? Think of how we are, the durable skins, and it's all good vision, right? There's a lot of innovation there and new startups, right? Simulation, the data, synthetic data, right? So you watch the names, right? That I listed here, and you see which one is going to come to the news later on, right? That signals the progress, right? What is this? It's more like a Meta said, the software enabler for Nvidia, the building the bridge, right? Nvidia, okay. When there is the hardware enabler for Meta, right? The complement, right? It's an ecosystem. I don't know. You can do everything yourself, right? It is really a vibrant community, right? You have to be part of it. That is why I'd love to see that China, US do not completely like divorce, right? Break down, fragment, some level of collaboration, integration, and complements, and even through the market acquisition merger, right? And I don't know if you switch the table, if China tried to buy a company like Hugging Face, is it possible from US? I guess blocked right away, right? But you can understand why a company like miners through the acquisition, like TikTok, it could be some sort of struggle there. Yeah, you have to be fair to think this is, some level of regulation is required for national interest. But again, you really have to allow some level of collaboration as well, right? Because we are in the same world, okay? Admit it, right? And hopefully Europe gonna catch up. I'd love to see some other part of the world they catch up as well, right? So, okay, that's the hand, right? It's the sparse model, right? You have to have the skin and you need the data, right? The missing piece is the scalable full body skin, right? Right? I mean, I don't know. There is any some stuff. If you remember Michael Jackson in the early years, I was still live by the Arsenal part. change the scheme. Give a skin to this robotics, like, it's even more challenging, right? Fortunately, right? We thought that's difficult enough, but now it's more difficult, right? I don't know, my thoughts jumping everywhere. Any case, a closer look is first the closed reality gap. Yeah, Nvidia strategy, the simulation lab, exact lab, right? Digital twin, the tactile data, synthetic SDK, you have to allow the training. Enriching that, you need to touch realistics, right? Foundation. They have a few, 12 open models right now. And the foundation model project Groot deployment. I'm pretty sure Elon Musk is going to catch up. Everybody is going to rush into that. This is very lucrative market. And it's where if you have a startup, and one of the reasons I do this kind of research, right? Jump in, as I do, right? I'm very aggressive on that as well. Solution providers, missing data. Yeah, I'm be part of the community, right? Don't play alone, right? You might not be the smartest, right? You may get things wrong, but everybody gets things wrong, right? So you heard of the Microsoft recall, the Windows PC, whatever that is, right? They enable that whatever self-recording. That's a disaster, right? So what? I mean, you correct yourself and move on, right? Yeah, I hope IBM going to catch up a bit. We're going to do a little investigation, see where they are, right? Credible past market, 36 months. Okay, that you can figure it out. I'm not going to spend much time. You have your roadmap, right? The pitch. Oh, that beyond me. You can pitch yourself. What is this? The pitch to Nvidia. Close the reality gap. Okay, yeah, you have to have this pitch even before you start your business, right? If you don't foresee that you can sell, or you're just repeating whatever others are doing, no innovation, right? It is just forget it, right? Unless you're Elon Musk, right? I mean, like the enabler platform, the opticals and capacitive and the neuromorphic, right? The reality is that there are opportunities. There's so many, right? And it is bigger than you might imagine, right? But pick the one, pick the battle you want to fight, and you can win, right? Don't just throw the millions your venture capitalist or your angel investor give you, just throw in the water, right? And do this homework, like what I'm doing, right? It is important, right? To build the software, make it scalable, right? That's really, right, to summarize, that's what we try to look at, right? Okay, let's take a little pause. We continue the topic from a different angle. Before we do, some of you are visual, right? You like pretty charts. I generated. I didn't draw this thing because I don't need to, right? Let's take a look at these, right, and see how they are. Right? This is what's going to come, right? To look at on the left, it's China, right? You're going to have open source kind of catch up, right? Eventually, they're going to have to evolve, right? Keep asking, how do they make money, right? Obviously, they push AI into the factory, to this desert, to the mines, right? To the schools, to hospitals and banks. A lot of infrastructure capacity, the industrial capacity, give them plenty of data to train their models, right? Now they have the chips from the SMIC, it's the Shanghai chip maker, and Huawei, some others, 10, 20 of them try to catch very aggressively. But it's not going to be a problem, not for long term. Maybe in a year or two, I'm going to catch up. In the middle, obviously, we have Gemini 3. That's incredible, like DeepMind, Dennis and folks, right? That's the fundamental, it's not huge innovation, but in a way, at the enterprise level, sort of enabler, right? The TPU is behind it, right? Meta, obviously, aggressive acquisition. Nvidia, dominant, right? On the right side is going to be new. Next frontier is going to be embedded, the physical AI, robotics timeline. That's eventually we're going to get to, right? That's maybe going to be an age of abundance, like Elon Musk in the latest interview, saying that, and hopefully it's going to make everybody high income, right? If we got into that kind of, world, do we really need high income, right? We need income anyways, right? I don't really think so yet. Maybe I changed my mind. The iPhone moment. But iPhone, why is iPhone? Why is like Apple? I'm kind of looking to that, right? Catch up, right? Then just dwell on your already incredible, business, right? That's good, but that's in the past, right? You have to move forward, right? Okay, so yeah, let's see if the message is going to sink in, right? Before we move. Yeah, it's going to be a war, merger and acquisition, right? For this AI businesses and talents, the startups, right? It's like a market force, right? Hopefully, it still works, right? The word, as you can see, I mentioned, acquire, hire. It's a primary growth strategy, right? In terms of talent, right? That's talking about the talent, right? The Nvidia and Grok, 20 billion, right? Jonathan Ross, right? He gave a lot of talk, right? Just to push up the market capitalization. Then OpenAI and John Ivy, right? This the top iPhone designer, right? Who started the I/O. You know that story, right? Meta minus we reviewed now is about 2 billion. The fragmented super labs, right? That's either Suits curve, right? SSI is 32 billion valuation despite the public. The thinking machine labs, there's Mira, right? Marathi, right? They're all former key players in OpenAI, right? Research like John, they all have their own things. The Professor Young, the coin, had a new venture, right? That's is it in Europe, right? Paris? We need to look into that, right? And see the recognition of AGI, right? That they all pivot towards that physical AI, right? Industrial integration, sanitized structure, Singapore pivot, right? The talent imbalance, right? India has a lot of AI talent. It's undervalued, right? Yeah, they have so many top players in the US, right? It's like that's why I put them together, right? very complementary, and probably eventually going to be a function as one in the AI part at least, right? The massive capital injection into Anthropic, right? There are different ways to look at the same thing, right? Whichever makes sense, right? The factory model, right? The different departments, they come together. A university model, right? Innovation-driven, research-driven, right? SSI and Young LeCun startup, right? And like to see where is Fei Li. I believe she is credible individual, right? Like to see where she's at, right? Okay, so but hopefully you got sink in. It takes a while, right? You probably know more. Just try to make sure that we don't waste time. Here, you do get something. Another way to look at the markets, right? Whether it's factory model or the university model, right? Is the another view, right? This called periodic table, right? If you understand the chemistry part, right? For a big, quick thing, it's like this, right? Each element in the table represents a distinctive capability in the AI ecosystem, right? That's what it is, right? Like RAG, right? Retrieval, augmentation, generation, right? That's critical, but a lot of ways to do that. And prompts, embedding, large language, each of them thinking model, multi-agent, synthetic data fine-tuning. It's a good way to look at it, right? So, another thing, right? You look at the production rack, taking rack example, right? On the agentic side, how they come together. It's a very good way to think, right? You look at this, the enterprise scale, these come together, right? They have 20,000 employees. Right? They create a lot of agents, but how do they really govern them, right? BNY Mellon, right? 55.8 trillion assets. Right? They created operating system, as I mentioned, the enterprise AI part, right? It's good. It's really good, encouraging to see that, right? Now, through this, you can really see clearly, right? What are they doing, right? Where the gaps are and strengths are, what could be the next step, right? As a big enterprise, they need to have a governance structure, a lot of security questions, regulation, and they have to have a roadmap, right? How they have to have returns, and now they're throwing billions of money, right? Okay, now this model formula is the central of intense debate, right? Mark Anderson again, Young LeCun, right? And the frontier is the thinking model. Yeah, we're thinking through the market, right? That's IBM, but yeah, really, where is IBM? You need to look at that. The entire periodic table is built on the foundation, right? Specialized hardware, right? Jeff Dean from Google, right? Periodic table, market dynamics, right? Yeah, it's good to look at that. Again, the meta, right? Thinking of the chemistry, right? The chemical reaction, the physics, right? there are standard models, right? As well, what a gravity, what force at play, right? Is it magnetic or what, right? How these particles, right, the elements, whatever, when they formulate the atom, right, a nuclei, a lot is one way of thinking through. It is good, right? Nvidia broke Meta minus, right? It's one of the hardware layer. The other is an application, right? It's a good thought, right? See, Siemens, Nvidia, PepsiCo, right? A lot of efficiencies, right? Like look at that PepsiCo, they warehouse 20% of efficiency, right? But again, where do you get the data to train the model? What are the gaps to put it together? From the lab, from innovation, from the scientific research, or any sort of technology, there's a gap engineering, right? Any case, look at it again. It's China against, I don't want to use the word against, maybe, together, right? Through Singapore this time, right? Some small facilitators, right? But again, there's a lot of VC investment. Okay. I mean, if you give me $1 billion, I could do something like 10 times, 100 times return. But who is going to give you that? A lot of red tapes, right? So here's AI periodic table, the living framework for decoding the present and navigating the future. It's really good, right? IBM. I would say that IBM have a lot of credible predictions. Like I might look into that, like how they predicted by 2025, 80% worked out. That's incredible, right? Like they have a crystal ball, right? But as a big company, like as respectable as you are, is that all you can do, IBM? You got to do better, right? Can you not? In any case, let's look at this, right? Fill it up, right? This is really a good, thing, right? Like a tsunami, right? In a capital side, the investment is one flying well, right? But again, that's helped me. Once I get through this, build up the stage, I'm not going to give you like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or 1 minute. But you need to fit in where to make sense to you, because otherwise I can give you a lot of information, talks, very impressive charts, and it doesn't really help you, right? You have to think through, know what you are really looking at. Right? What are you really doing, right? What are you really thinking? Do you know how to think, right? Where to think, where to focus your brain cell, right? You might have a brilliant mind, but if you're thinking of Mars, right, it doesn't really help you, does it? Right? You need to think a particular tangible enough, you're able to engineer that, a lot of innovation. You're able to sell it, make money, and sustain that. You need to fit in, right? It's this ecosystem, right? It's in a periodic table, right? Probably the one way of thinking that doesn't matter. The factory model, the physical AI, doesn't matter. There's a lot of ways to think, right? Whichever you fit to, right? It's a marketplace. It's a business venture, right? It's not only just a research in lab, right? Okay, now we're gonna switch the. Let me check. We might continue next time, but let's see. We need to wrap up. Right? Not too long, right? Not too short. Just able to stimulate your thinking, right? You have to system okay, you cannot just have fragmented thoughts. Thinking doesn't work in that manner, right? You can pick up a lot of, knowledge or know-how, like, doing the homework. But actually, if you want to innovate and doing the business thing, it's not going to work that way, right? You have to keep thinking. It's the hardest thing that the human can do. Right? Okay, this is another way of looking at it, like, some sort of map, right? Thinking through. It's focusing on the possible innovations, startups, mergers, acquisitions in the 2026, right? Approximately tactical sensing, right? Market gaps, right? Lack of skins. We talked about it. We look at these very pretty charts, right? Training data, teleoperation latency, standardization issue. Right? You have known that, right? And if you start up, here's the kind of concept you can look at, right? The data synthesis SDK, modular e-scan, unified tactile kind of API, right? Low latency haptic codec, right? If you were looking at some landscape, you position on is, Hugging Face, examples, right? China have a lot of things that, hundreds of thousands, right? I'm gonna dive deep into that, make sure that if you want to buy, we can buy, right? And if you want to innovate, make sure that you don't already have 10 in China, but doing the same thing probably better, right? Unless you can copy it, right? Don't bother, right? Maybe buy them, right? And then the state of art, whatever technology, right? Multimodal sensing, like high resolution, optical sensors, neuromorphic processing, simulation-ready tactile data, right? If you're big and you want to fill in some of the gaps, like Meta and Nvidia, we use that example, right? Have sparse model, sensor, digit, right? Digit platform, metaverse, immersion focus, right? Like Nvidia again. They have Groot foundational model, Isaac lab simulation, digit twin, tactile feedbacks, right? So those are the things, right? Again, if you are big, you have a map, that's what I mentioned, right? Do some MVP, get IP and patent. You need to really formulate strategic partnership, demonstrate your good idea, the innovation, not just live in the lab. You actually can be deployed in the real world, solve the real business problem, or fit into close the gap or something, right? This merger acquisition is one of the exit strategies, right? Haptics, right? The feedback bottleneck, the reality gap, right? This is another way of looking at what you do, right? So, again, it's close to an hour, right? We need to close, right? These two individuals, right? They see what they're going to come out, right? Thinking machines and the SSI, super safe surveillance, right? You may not famous, but you could be better, right? The reason they could raise billions because they are known, right? They have some credibility, right? It doesn't mean they're smarter, right? Or it doesn't mean they can do better than you, right? But essentially, try to deliver the message is kind of a lot of potential, plenty of opportunity, right? We're in a kind of revolution, right? To destroy a lot of things is also open up a lot of opportunity, right? So especially in 2026, right? So foundational models to physical reality, that's the major trend, right? You know, you can imagine this, the body, right? Somewhere, okay? As you can convergence of the robotics autonomy, right? I think there's a huge opportunity there, right? Okay, the glasses, right? We talked about the Meta, but a lot of its ventures in China as well. The new economy, how many? 25 billion. Financial scale of major AI acquisition. Look at it, right? Okay. Well, many of these we have, you know, how many? It's Polar Auto network, right? How many of these? 32 billion from Google and Meta. It's a lot, right? And answer pick, right? Question is year of application, right? Maybe 2026 year of acquisition, right? No longer if, but how much, right? The bank's budget for AI related, yeah, it's another player, right? The banks, right? Or any larger telecommunication, any other industry, they might buy some AI innovations, the startup, right? It's not limited to just the 7 big players, right? But in any case, we need to close this talk, right? I'm going to continue. See if anything I need to leave to you that you can help you to think, right? Okay, we need to close up. But here's another way of looking at the whole start, right? The talents, right? If you don't want to start a business, you're talented, you know, find your way, right? Don't get into a sunset kind of enterprise where they give you a higher salary or give you that vetted praises, and then you just lock in there. Get out that shell, that comfort zone, and get into the harsh new reality, right? Maybe that's gonna help you better, right? It's like a golden break, right? The second top that is energy, right? If you have some thoughts there, right? Chips, obviously, we talked about that, you know, TPUs and GPUs in China and US infrastructure, obviously, right? The models, done that application, right? You know, there's more like a talent flipping that model, right? 50% of the talents, okay, patents, right? See, again, this China against the US, or US against China, right? The 50-50, right? Okay, so the applications leading 80%, right? Because they have industry, right? Manufacturing, agriculture, service, kind of 1.4 billion people, right? Frontier model, the US do leading, so they're close, right? Open source, right? Capacity advantage, right? Velocity, right? Dominant in the generations ahead, right? I don't believe that, frankly speaking. The mentality of China is that they don't really bluff at all, right? Until they can prove engineering and really manufacture that, not even say a damn thing. Lagging, obviously, right? But I think the environment there is kind of problematic, right? Yeah, LaQuinn is encouraging Jan LaQuinn speak up a lot, right? But again, let's see how much he can demonstrate for us, right? The agent, right? Like layer 5 and the airplanes, right? That's why I'm going to look into airport, right? See, why don't you do that? All right, this is more of a application, right? Age of, about that, right? I don't see a school education. I don't really think the robots can do better education than humans, right? But again, it's a way to learn, right? The Google's not vocabulary, right? If you used it, it's a great tool to learn, right? If you want to research, also really good. But we need a lot of competition there, right? They have a lot of not so good, not so perfect, the room to improve a lot, right? But I think they are on that. Right? And if you have some thoughts there, you can build up something, accept them, right? Rather than they have to do that internally, right? Once they are as big as Google, it's hard to innovate, right? Mark Zuckerberg built AI factories, right? I think Jason Huang in Las Vegas this week, right? Talk a lot about AI factory. Right? The GPUs again, Intel. Yeah, where is he? Intel, right? We need to look at that, right? AMD is doing Susan, right? I think great lady. I think Fei Li might team up with her, right? Not sure what is the detail, what is the story behind it, right? Huawei, right? Explosive. We're gonna look into Huawei later on, right? They're doing too much, right? A lot. Again, right? Imperative. Love insight there, energy, right? And eventually we got here quite a good visual, right? And this is the battleground. Oh, is the marketplace. Another way of looking at, right? So that's why we titled that is the marketplace. It's a wall, whichever way you're looking at it. It's a lot of opportunity, right? If you are a talent, go for it. If you a startup, go for it. If you want to start up, yeah, plenty of things you can do. There are millions, billions, and trillions to be made. We're in a revolution, right? 2026 is a way to pivot to the physical AI part. It's a turning point, right? We need to really scale up, right? It's a revolution, right? What else can we expect? The best time we're in, so be proud of that and contribute, right? Be part of it, most importantly. All right, we're going to continue next time. Next time, when I raise some small thing like in this domain that you understand where it's from. If you don't, just come back and read or listen to what I'm in through. Really, leading the thought process, you can dig in, right? What I discovered, right? If you have connections, you talk to Nadella or Elon Musk, way better, right? They know, they have that in their brain, they know that way better. Me, just thinking without any sort of peripheral thing and just sheer pure human brain, right? Very biological. All right. Thank you.
对酒当歌，人生几何？譬如朝露去日苦读，